So great to meet you. Thank you so much for taking a minute out.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited
Me
to
too.
chat.
Me too. So let's begin our journey into your music and your life, your creative world by asking you this. 5 years ago, this pandemic threw
Yes.
so many things into disarray, and especially for musicians. How did you make it through that COVID-19 era, and how has it changed the way that you approach things creatively and otherwise today?
Mm. I often reflect on that time because I think I got so lucky that because I was studying for my master's in 2017, 2018, so I was one of the last cohorts in that master's degree that got to have a live performance for their final graduation. And also, it was in 2019 that I toured my show to the Edinburgh Fringe. So I really got to have these two great shows, right before things were shut down. And of course, it was very challenging not to be able to perform live. But on the other hand, the pandemic, I felt kind of forced me to, suddenly there was a lot more time available because you were mostly at home, there was less commuting to do, and it actually pushed me to create more music. So I remember creating a lot that year, and some of my songs started to have like their first commercial success online during the pandemic. So
Mhm.
somehow I think it actually having all that extra time suddenly also forced one to be more productive, or at least that was my experience with it.
Yeah, for sure. So let me ask you this. If I was to put you in front of a bunch of kids, 12-year-olds, and they wanted to
Hmm.
know what your day looked like, what you do on a daily
Yes.
basis, how do you answer them?
What an interesting question. Well, my days do look quite different, to be honest, depending on what I do. I try to keep it a little bit intuitive, but also structure my week so that I get time to be creative, but also like to do my marketing, to do all of that behind the scenes work. And I would say that it's really the behind the scenes work, the unseen work, so to speak, that makes the biggest difference. Like, for example, to give you an example, last year, so in 2024, I was working on this challenge. So I was writing 100 songs in a year. So, like, at that point, every day I was in the studio writing something. Like, now I'm not doing that challenge. So there might be a day when I'm shooting, a music video, but there might also be a day when I'm just, making TikToks all day, to be honest. So it's
Yeah,
such a variety. It's kind of hard to pin it down into one framework that recurs.
yeah,
So many things you need to do as a modern musician. So.
for sure. No, I get it. So, what did you want to be when you were 12 years old? When you were growing up, was it always to be a
Oh,
singer?
my gosh, I went through so many iterations. I do remember that the very first thing I ever wanted to be, this was probably before 12, but I wanted to be a clown.
Okay.
And then I think it evolved from clown to astronaut to writer, like book author. And then I remember at 14, I wanted to be a classical pianist. So there's a little bit of a timeline of like
Yeah,
0 to 14 for you.
for sure. So, where were you born and raised?
Where was I born and raised?
Yeah.
Quite a few places, to be honest. I was born in St. Petersburg in Russia.
Okay. Okay.
But yeah, already when I was, I think, 6 or something, my parents separated. So then my mom was in Moscow, my dad was in St. Petersburg. So I was traveling back and forth. And then when I was 10, we moved abroad. So we moved to Europe and then to the States. And then I studied in England. So I'm quite a globe trotter.
Wow. So what do you think early on in your life gave you this creative spirit that you have? Obviously, you were reaching for that right brain creative world. What were the
Yes.
foundational elements that you witnessed that were a part of you evolving into the artist you are today?
That's another great question. There's nobody in my family. I mean, yes, now my siblings are creative, but there was nobody in my family, like my parents or grandparents, that I knew to have any sort of, creative profession or even creative hobbies. So it was something that kind of just came to me, I think, not from the family line, but somehow I had that inclination anyway. I think I was born into a world like, 1992, St. Petersburg, Russia. It's like right post communist era, like
Yeah.
exactly in that transition time. And in those years, so many creative voices were like exiled or silenced. And I think, I don't know, there might be something in that kind of collective lineage that I think made me want to, yeah, to be an artist because I was lucky enough to be born into a world where you could express yourself. And
Yeah.
yeah.
You know, what's interesting, when I really started reading on my own outside of school and got the bug, it was always Russian literature I loved. Dostoevsky, all those
Mm.
writers. And I
How
think
interesting.
about how much of a lineage in Russia there has been for creativity
Yes,
and for
exactly.
wonderful ideas that were coming out.
Yes, yes, exactly. Absolutely. There's such a rich artistic and cultural heritage. And just imagine all of the artists and authors, that we didn't hear. And actually on my third album that I'm creating right now, it'll be out next year. A lot of the songs talk about, like those stifled voices and the artists we didn't hear and how yeah, how I have this longing to, express for myself, but also for kind of people who came before me.
Yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
think living in that environment, being in a pressure cooker politically, so to speak, a suppressed environment, can almost lead to a level of artistic creation that's something humans will never see, that can be
Yes.
groundbreaking. And I'm curious when we take that camera back in history from what we're living through now, because there's a lot of things in America
Mhm.
that have completely become a part of that, that world of
Yes.
restriction and all of these things. And I'm curious, like in the creative process right now, do you find that there's more things to grab onto as you make songs and create?
Yeah, like honestly, I've never ever fingers crossed not to jinx this, ever suffered from like creative block or something because I just
Yeah.
feel there's so much to draw upon. I would say like personally, I draw a lot upon the past, my history, my collective history, and then kind of, synthesize that into the modern world. So like I said recently, like in my latest album, I've been exploring the time that I was born into and how that influences me as sort of an artist between worlds, like between that world and a new world. So this kind of like concept of liminality and in-betweenness has been huge for me because even after my childhood and formative years, it's like life still keeps pushing me in the direction of moving cities and countries. So liminality for me is like kind of a big point of inspiration right now. And I think we also live in a world where, many people are not in their own country right now. Like many people are displaced, many people are moving. So that's a theme that inspires me a lot personally, like thresholds and
Yeah. And I would imagine living that level of nomadic life where you're going from culture to culture would have to
mm.
increase your level of awareness, empathy, and you just have more in your creative world to choose from.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm, so grateful to have had this kind of upbringing. Of course, it comes with its own challenges, but at the end of the day, when I, 10 years old, like arrived in Europe and I was thrust into an English speaking environment, not speaking, any word of English, suddenly that expanded me so much, like to have to adapt to that and to grow up to reach that level. I mean, I really think I was changed at that age forever. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Speaking of other moments that change you forever, not only as an artist, but as a spectator, the first music concert you went to that blew you away, that gave you that feeling that I either want to be up there or I want to consume as much music as I can. What was there a moment like that? One of the first shows?
Mm. When I was a little girl, I think still I was living in Russia, I was obsessed with this. Gosh, is she from Argentina? I think Argentinian artist. She was so popular at the time. She was called Natalia Oreiro.
Yeah,
I think she's from Argentina. I so hope I'm not wrong. If not, then it's like a nearby country.
yeah,
Um, or was it Paraguay? Maybe it's Paraguay.
yeah,
And I just, if she was in town, I would get my mom to take me several times to the same concert. It was such a craze. And,
yeah,
despite she wasn't singing any songs in Russian, but all these Russians were just going crazy for her. So somehow the
yeah.
music, really transcended like any language barrier or anything like that. So those were my formative concerts.
It's interesting. I have a jazz radio show, and the Japanese absolutely love jazz. Like they
Mm,
worship it in a way that America did when the Beatles came the first time. I mean, it's just
wow.
it's a phenomenon, and they have LPs and Sharpies, and they're quiet
Mm.
during performances, and I've always been fascinated with that. And I've gotten several different reasons, but it's the same thing. It's the
Yes.
culture you would not expect that the black culture of America that has become this artistic behemoth would be
Mm.
something that would sway this Asian continent that is so technologically driven? Like what disparaging what area in between made that so attractive? It's
Yes.
fascinating, you
How
know?
interesting. Wow, I
Yeah.
didn't know that. I
Yeah.
learned something new today.
It's wild. So let me ask you this. What was the first stage that you got on? What was the moment that you got in front of a microphone or in front of a crowd and you knew this is what I was made to do?
Mm. Because, that's you ask very interesting questions because, of course, I was on stage many times, but I'm trying to think now, when was that moment that I really believed in it enough that, it solidified with me? Because to be honest, my first few times on stage, like, I felt that it went terribly. Um, I have to say, like, a very formative moment. And it's so interesting how, as an artist, you experience what you did so differently from the audience. But
Yeah.
in 2019, so right before the pandemic, I took my show Hauntology, which was based on my first album, to the Edinburgh Fringe. And we had this, somewhat theatricized representation of that musical album on stage. And I think it was the first night, and they also gave us a very strange time to perform. It was like 11:30 p.m. And it was the first night, not much marketing had been done yet, thousands of shows competing for attention. So I think we had like two or three people in the audience. I didn't know it at the time, but one of them was a reviewer. And I just did it, but the entire time I was thinking, oh my God, like this is dreadful. I don't like how I'm singing. I don't like what I'm doing. Nobody showed up. How can I just bring a whole team to the fridge and, for a thing that nobody will ever come and see? And I thought I sang terribly. And, I just walked out of that performance and my whole band was like worried about me because I was just paralyzed like with dread. I thought it went so badly. And then the next morning, we received a review from that reviewer. I didn't even realize he was there. And apparently he gave a standing ovation and I didn't even see it because I was so lost in my dread, my perceived dread of what had happened. And then he wrote just the most like spectacular 5-star review. And then later at the end of the fringe, he said that this was like the most moving show he'd ever seen in his entire years of reviewing the fringe. And he
Wow.
just felt so touched. He felt like, it was a show for him. And he said it was even more special that he was practically the only person in the audience. And I was like, wow, like I was telling myself that this was the most dreadful thing that ever happened to me.
Yeah.
And to somebody else, it was like the best thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of the best thing, if you could see a performer right now in their prime, see them live, and maybe even
Mm.
meet them afterwards, talk to them,
Yes.
get an idea of who they are that might help you on your artistic journey, who would that
Yes.
be?
I have to say, I love the artist Wise Blood right now.
Okay.
She's from LA and she makes, just spectacular art, baroque pop music. I mean, I love it. Of course, it's a very hard tie. Like if I could meet Kate Bush, I would also,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to say no, but
Yeah.
from artists that are very active right now, yeah, I would love to meet Wise Blood.
So I'm a Gen Xer. I come from the 90s and I just watched a documentary on Lilith Fair. Have you seen that?
I don't think so.
It was the all women's music festival that went around the country for years and
Oh,
years. And it
okay.
was amazing. So when you're talking about kind of that level of energy, it was Sarah McLaughlin. She was
Oh
the one that
yeah.
Kate Bush was on the bill. Tracy Chapman was in there. Cheryl Crow was in there. I mean,
Wow.
Natalie Merchant. I mean, you can go on and on and on. But it was wild because they were just talking about how it started and how it kind of got its own
Mm,
life and it kept going. And Lilith was the woman before Eve in the Garden
yes.
she was the initial. So it was all based off of Lilith, and they just
Oh,
called it a fair because they wanted to make it something that was benign enough for people to really get into. But it was a really cool thing. Anyway, it'll be interesting based on your answer to kind of look into that historically. And I'm thinking,
yes.
coming from the 90s, I sometimes wonder what kind of cool stuff did we give the world? And there was those kinds of examples. That was
Mm,
totally a part of kind of our level of reincarnating the 60s and doing something that
yes.
was memorable in a long version of Woodstock without all the messiness, you know?
Oh, how interesting. Yes, I mean, I'm definitely very into Lilith as an archetype.
Yeah.
So,
Uh-huh.
Yes, I would love to
And
see
she
this.
explains that, and the artwork was literally based off of all of the early recollections and just the whole thing. I mean, it was just like you when you watch it, you just get the sense that there's all these creative spirits. I mean, the Indigo Girls and all these people, and they were all just absolutely ecstatic to create together. No ego, no
Mm.
weirdness. Anybody that could pop into the room, they just created this thing, and they all craved that whole vibe the whole time, and it was
Okay,
good.
yes,
Yeah.
this is what I'm going to be watching tonight for
Yeah,
sure.
I think it's on Hulu. It's good. It's very good.
Hulu?
So,
Okay.
yeah. So let me ask you this. Being an artist in this modern times can be difficult.
Yes.
There's uncertainty with gigs and money and all these things, but at the end of the day, when you have that creative spirit, you're going for it. What is
Yes.
it that gets you to wake up when that alarm clock goes off, maintain a high level, create every day, protect your soul? What is that energy for you?
Hmm. It's indeed a very interesting time to be living in because, on one hand, we have just an unprecedented number of opportunities to make it as independent artists. On the other hand, it's more oversaturated than ever, and you kind of have to go to, or you don't have many other options than going to TikTok and, doing the thing and becoming your own marketer. So, all of that can seem a little bit soul destroying and like it takes you away from your art. So, what does get me up in the morning? I think it's the sacredness of the process, like the feeling that I get when writing a song, when a new song is birthed to life. It's
Yeah,
a process of creation. Nothing can compare to it. And I would say primarily it really is that feeling of birthing this new thing into the world. And, sometimes it feels like it doesn't even come, or it comes through me but not from me. And then the next level, and this is not primary, this is, I would say, secondary, but it's when it gets heard and it moves somebody, and it does something to their life, to their day, to their dreams. It becomes like a soundtrack for a special moment in their life. I try to detach myself from that because it doesn't always happen. So I would say it's the process of creating and the privilege to be able to create that, yeah, like you said, gets me out of bed in the morning. But it's
yeah,
also, of course, a fantastic feeling to be able to perform live and to know that your music is touching people. Yeah.
yeah. So when you have this dream of being a musician,
Mhm.
you have this idea in your head of what your career is going to be like, what your life is going to become. But then
Yes.
there's the reality of what actually happens when you become that musician. What's
Mm,
been the
mhm.
difference between the dream and the career that you have now?
Mm. Well, some things did happen as I dreamed. Others are yet to happen.
Yeah.
And there's yet a third category, which is, amazing things happening that I never could have even dreamed of. And I would say that I've come to embrace myself as a kind of, well, in human design, there's a specific type of manifester. It's a non-specific manifester. And that means that, it's better for you to concentrate on the feeling you long to experience, the impact you want to make, rather than on that specific thing. So I found that for me, it's always been, more productive to dream kind of like of the bigger picture rather than of specific milestones, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because I used to kind of write down my goals, like, I want to play to 10,000 people, or I want to play at this particular venue. But then I was like, wait, I think I'm limiting myself from other things coming in that could be even better, even more interesting, even more suitable. So um, I would say, the biggest way in which I'm probably living my dream right now is I get to create on my own terms. I get to fully express my own vision. I don't have anybody telling me, you must do it like this, or you must dress like that, or you
Yeah.
must do your art right. And that's so special. Like, I really think that's something worth holding on to. I can't even imagine like somebody else controlling my artistic narrative at this point.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. No, no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
And yeah, another, amazing thing that is happening is like, because prior to my music career, I had a little bit of an acting career too. And now the two are sort of intertwining. And, I'm doing more work with filmmakers and even acting again. And yeah, I would love to kind of merge the two practices together in the near
Yeah.
future.
So as a performer, what was the first stage that you got on where you were like, wow, this is great. This is happening. And what would be an ultimate stage you would love to perform on?
So what was the stage where I loved what was happening. Let me probably the stage at the Albany in London. So that was
Yeah.
where I had my graduation show, and we had amazing facilities. I was able to, so fortunately ask for beautiful lighting and projections, and I had props and Radiohead's live sound engineer was doing my
Oh,
sound. So,
cool.
just loved it.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful graduation show. I'll always remember that. And a stage that I would love to play, I'd love to play a stage that's like an old school sort of theater vibe, like even like the Royal Albert Hall or
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah, I would
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah.
With
So,
an orchestra.
yeah, for sure. Let me ask you this. Of all of the people that you performed in front of, you obviously have fans that reach out and send letters and come up to you. What's been
Uh-huh.
one that really stuck? One that somebody had commented on what your music did to them that stayed with you all this time?
I mean, definitely that reviewer from The Fringe
Yeah.
that I mentioned previously. Yeah, I
Yeah.
would say that stuck the most for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
S- So, of everything that you've accomplished up to this point, everything you've more importantly evolved to, what are you the proudest of?
Probably of writing 100 songs last year
Yeah.
because, it took a special kind of like commitment to myself and to my practice to show up for that because nobody was really seeing that. Nobody was praising it. Like nobody could see the final product. I just was kind of showing up for myself. And it was an unseen practice. And, later things happened that felt kind of like indirect rewards for that whole thing. But to show up like that, like just for myself and my art, really took a special kind of commitment. So I'm really proud of, yeah, how I showed up last year.
Yeah. So everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, fans, everyone that you perform with on the bandstand, on the business end, but you run the show. What's your
Yeah.
perception of you? Who do you think you are?
um, who do I think I am? I would say I'm, a very hardworking, driven artist that will always find a way to make art, no matter what it takes. I'm very kind of self-sufficient and resourceful, and I always find a way. And um, yeah, and I'm just here to make art music that connects people to an unseen world, to the sacred world. And yeah, and I have the privilege of having been able to live between worlds, create between worlds, and yeah, I also want to enable other people to, yeah, traverse this world and another, if that makes sense. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it,
that's my
it
favorite thing.
certainly does. And I can't help thinking in this modern era right now, especially this year, with all of the things that we've gone through politically and whatnot that have created stress and strife, not only in this country, but globally. Are you cognizant of having that ability to get on stage and transport people into a place where it can kind of melt away for a little while?
Yes, definitely. And that's something that drives me very much. Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So you'll be in Belgium in 3 days?
No, that gig got moved.
Okay.
It's gonna be on January 25th now in
Okay.
Belgium. Yeah.
So that was going to be my lead in. If anybody wants to get your music, your videos, wonderful videos, see
Thank
you
you.
live, any of the good work, any of the creative world that you're in, where do they go?
So they can find me as Monelise on Spotify, Monelise. I also have an official website, monelise.com, where you can get all of my merchandise and gig updates and also sign up to my mailing list. You can also support me on Bandcamp. Yeah, and if you don't have Spotify, I'm also on all of the other major streaming services. So Apple Music, Amazon Music, YouTube.
Yeah, however you want to choose it. I will make sure to put those links in the show notes. This has been absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for your story. Thank you for taking some time out today, and best of luck with everything.
Thank you so much for the amazing questions and just beautiful, insightful conversation. It was so great
Absolutely.
to meet you.
Great to meet you. Thank you. Best of luck.
Thank you.